And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our host for today's Feature Conversations, award-winning journalist and KQED's new morning anchor, Brian Watts.
Good afternoon. All right, you're there. So for me, Dr. Martin Luther King is family. Not because I knew him or know him, but because he has to be family. Every year, there are more of us who weren't alive when he was leading marches, delivering powerful speeches, writing thoughtful letters from jail cells. So we came to know him through our family. When Dr. King was killed, my mother was a grad student preparing for a career as an educator, pregnant with me. What would she tell me about this man and why he was killed? My father was a law student preparing for a career as a civil rights attorney. Both would return to Charlotte, North Carolina to do what they could to pursue Dr. King's dream. The more they told me about King, the more he became a comforting family member. He was celebrated because he was nonviolent. When I was young, I was angry. I was very aware of injustice, but I really didn't like to fight. Dr. King had my back. Not only was that okay, but his example, his legacy told me it was the right way to be. It reassured me that there were better ways to change things than fighting. When I was 11, my father managed the campaign of Harvey Gantt for mayor of Charlotte. I went door to door, put up yard signs, and we fell short that time. But a few years later, we pulled it off. We elected the first black mayor of Charlotte. Fast forward to today. I go to work every morning in San Francisco, where the acting mayor happens to be an African-American woman. So it is my honor to ask you to please welcome our first guest, the acting mayor of the city and county of San Francisco, the Honorable London Breed.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
How are your feet?
My feet are good. Yeah, we had a good time. When you're marching and singing and you have such great energy, you don't even think about those kinds of things.
All right. Well, so you are a San Francisco native.
Yes.
I want to know what role Dr. King played in your life, how you knew about him growing up here in San Francisco.
Well, probably it started with birthday parties and singing Happy Birthday.
All right.
We would sing the regular version, and then we sing the Stevie Wonder version, and we talked about Dr. King in our schools, just nonviolence and the movement. I just don't remember a time when Dr. King wasn't a part of my life and my learning experience here in the city. So I'm honored to be here today to celebrate his legacy. Was
there a picture somewhere?
Oh, of course, there was a picture. Yeah. There was President Kennedy and Dr. King.
Right.
That was in our homes. And then also we had the Jesus table. So yes.
So as you have grown up, I think you were, can I say what year I think you were born?
Sure.
1974.
Okay, 40's the new 30, so
hey.
It's okay.
49 is the new 22. 1974. How has the city progressed in your mind? And
yeah, the city has changed. even as someone who grew up here, sometimes I walk around and I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? And it feels so different. And also the people. And when you grow up here, you're used to mostly, I spent a lot of time in my neighborhood, so you know everyone. And so now it's, you know, not like that in the neighborhood I grew up. I mean, when you see someone, you're like, hey, you're excited to see people that you grew up with. So it's changed a lot in terms of the number of people. It's more crowded, traffic, and even the issues around homelessness and substance abuse and mental illness. It's you know, the neighborhood I grew up in had its challenges in that regard, but I just, you know, don't remember it being, you know, as bad as some of the places that we see in the city today.
In terms of the African American population, when I moved here about a year and a half ago for this job, I read an article in the New York Times that was entitled "The Loneliness of Being Black in San Francisco." I was trying to get to know the city, and this article was essentially about how the population has declined. Since the 70s, when you were born, 1 in 7 San Franciscans were African Americans. By 2016, when I was reading that article, it was 1 in 20. But you've been here.
Yeah.
You stayed. Have friends and family moved away?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I barely stayed. I mean, the public housing development that I grew up in, the only reason we, you know, like my family wasn't living there anymore is because they were torn down, and over 300 units were torn down, and about 200 units were built to replace them. So I didn't understand it back then, but clearly 100 of my households definitely weren't coming back. They moved a lot of my friends to Vallejo and Fairfield and Antioch, Section 8 vouchers and other things. And so it was a really challenging time. I was like at the end of high school, beginning of college. It was really tough and pretty frustrating. And so I didn't notice the change then because as a young person, you're just surviving. But as I got older and I would go away to school, and then I went to UC Davis and I would come back and just notice the difference. And this person moved and that person moved, and this place called Food Land, which was our grocery store, and actually they changed the name to Gold Lane, but we always called it Food Land. And Food Land closed, and it was like, wait, Food Land is closing. I mean, that was, people would still come from Vallejo and other places to shop there, and it just, as that started happening and things start closing, I really noticed the difference.
And do you feel like it was simply a question of housing, like in the case of the project you knew, it was demolished, but do you feel like it became just, what were the reasons you were hearing from the people who left about why they decided not to live here anymore?
Well, some of them didn't decide. Some of them had no choice. It was hard to find a place where your Section 8 voucher could be used in the city because even back then, rents were really expensive. So that was one of the issues. And sadly, with some of my friends, there was a lot of violence, and they had sons, and they were worried about their kids growing up in the neighborhood with so many challenges. And so, and then there were also, sadly, people who were homeowners who the mom or the grandmother would pass away, and then the children would probably have a life someplace else, and they would sell the property. And a lot of it, I think, had a lot more to do with affordability than anything else, but there were definitely a combination of things.
So let's talk a little bit more about Dr. Martin Luther King. In 1955, he was thrust onto the world stage with the bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama. You have been thrust onto the world stage recently with the death of Mayor Ed Lee. Now is very urgent for you to take up the theme. What What's different about governing? What has surprised you in your new role as acting mayor?
I think governing, as president of the board, I've served on commission, so I've been a part of, helping to govern in the city in various capacities, whether it was an employee, commissioner, board of supervisors. But that's one thing, and it's different when you're mayor because you're responsible for everything and everybody. And I think what I didn't expect, I mean, as a native, I love the city. I take a lot of pride in the way the city looks and in solving issues. But I was really surprised that I feel this incredible responsibility for everybody. Like, I just feel like everybody is my responsibility in this role, whether it's someone, sadly, who's sleeping on the sidewalks, who needs services. I mean, I can't tell you how many phone calls and text messages I send to the director of homelessness, and then I need a follow-up to know what happened. I'm like, what is going on? And what's great about many of the people who work for the city, especially the homeless outreach team, they know the names of the people that are in certain locations who have sadly been there with some substance abuse challenges, some mental health issues. And I'm really also proud that, our behavioral health programs and navigation center, some of the things that I knew existed because we look at the budget and we're like, how much does that cost? And we're, going over all of that in the Board of Supervisors. And so I don't get a chance to always visit many of those places, but as mayor, you're going, you're talking to people, you're seeing the lives that have been changed. Someone, this veteran, Mr. Simpson, who was homeless veteran, he has this housing, and when he talked about it, he was almost in tears, and just what we had to do to get these 70 units for formerly homeless veterans. I mean, all of this is, I think, something that I don't know if I even expected, just what I'm feeling as a result of being in this position, and that's probably, that was the most surprising thing to me.
So when you go to bed at night and you realize that you haven't solved all the problems in one day, are you okay with that?
I'm all right with that. Because there's always like at least one person sometimes that we did something, like there's one person every day. Just think about we have an estimated number of homeless people on our street at somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people, and I get that there's an urgency of now that, wait a minute, one on the street is one too many, and thousands on the street. How are we going to conquer this problem? We can't get caught up in that. What we have to do is get caught up in the solutions that are going to eventually lead to those 7,000 getting off the street, and then preventing some people who can't afford to pay their rent or who are having trouble from getting evicted or put out in the first place. So just really looking at the bigger picture in terms of prevention, and then one day at a time, and trying to put the right resources in place that are going to help with this issue. I mean, when you grow up poor, where you really are poor, the value of what a dollar can do for somebody's life. And then when I think about San Francisco and our budget of over $10 billion, I'm thinking, where is that money going? Do we need to cut out certain office supplies? Do we need to cut back? Think about it. Every dollar, and I want everyone to understand that, every dollar we spend means a dollar that we can't use to take care of someone who needs us to be able to take care of them. And so in my mind, that's how I think, because I know what a dollar can do for someone who doesn't have anything, and I know how much money we're spending on trying to deal with these issues. And what, I'm focused on is making sure that we're not just giving out money to give out money, but those programs are working because people are depending on us.
So in listening to you speak, and you mentioned going to UC Davis, when you were there, did you know this is what you wanted to do?
UC?
I hear you. My wife went to UC Davis. I think you guys were around the same years.
Oh, wow.
So when you were there,
I didn't know what I was going to do.
Did you imagine this? Did you imagine this turn of events, this moment in your life?
When I went to college, it was because I had all these teachers who just really had my back. They were like, you're smart, you talk a lot, but you're smart. And,
That kind of sounds familiar.
they were like, you got to go to college. And I was like, okay. They gave me vouchers to apply so I didn't have to pay any fees. They made me take the SAT. I didn't have to pay for that. Like, I didn't even know what was going on, but people helped me. And I went to college. I got a chemistry scholarship. I was working at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. I was doing a lot of research there, and I thought I was going to be a chemist, but I was like bored out of my mind. I was like, how long does it take the crystallizations to happen? I mean, this is just, can we play with the liquid nitrogen? We didn't play with the liquid nitrogen. We didn't want any problems. But I just didn't have the patience for chemistry, and so I ended up changing my major, almost 2 years before graduating, and I was like, I need to go home. People in my neighborhood that I grew up with, they were dying, and I was in college, and I was thinking, why aren't they all here with me? They were going to jail, and I was like, missing my friends and missing, my community, and just so frustrated and thinking, if I can do it, they can do it, and I want something more. And so a big part of my dedication to public service had everything to do with, I grew up and I start understanding all these great things that happen because people had my back and supported me, and so I wanted to bring that back to the community. And so I've been back ever since, but I didn't think I would be running for office because I was like, how can I raise all that money? Or how can I, I never knew it was possible for many, many years, even as an adult, until later on in life.
So if a young person, and I think you've placed a lot of emphasis on including young people in your efforts, asked you for advice, what are you telling them?
I would just, first of all, tell them to work, hard and smart, to, finish their education, to be prepared, to develop good relationship with good people. Like the people that were around me, there's just something that you get a feeling for, where you got this one friend who's sadly probably out there robbing somebody or selling drugs or doing something, and that doesn't even feel right for some reason, and then you got this other friend who's just positive and excited and encouraging you. I was just really fortunate that so many people in my church, people in my community, my friends were so supportive, so I surrounded myself with good people. I also worked really hard. I read a lot. I paid attention to things, and I tried to improve myself in general so that I can do well in life. It wasn't about running for supervisor or running for mayor. I just wanted to be successful, and I wanted to support my community because that was important to me. And I think part of part of it is, you still have to work hard. You think, and I got a lot of kids that we work with at the Cultural Center who are just so smart, so talented, and they spend a lot of time, researching and writing and paying attention. They don't just get out on stage and perform. They have to get ready, and a lot goes into rehearsal and learning things and learning about the trade that you're focused on. And so my advice would, of course, be to make sure that you are a student of learning and that you're prepared and you're doing everything you can to understand what it is that you want so that you can be prepared for it when you're going after it.
All right. So, applause is allowed. Applause is allowed. Let me ask you about Dr. King's message and legacy in closing. You would have been born 6 years after he passed. How do you feel we as a society are doing vis-a-vis what he said?
That's a hard one because, of course, when Barack Obama was elected president, I was in tears, and I felt like, I can't believe this. I never thought I'd see this in my lifetime. And then when the current president was elected, I was in tears for a different reason. And I thought, with Barack Obama, wow, look at how far we've come. We elected a man named Barack Obama to be our president, and he's black. And then we do the extreme opposite with someone who is just sadly a horrible person. And it breaks my heart. I can fight it out over policy decisions and disagree and deal with that, but the things that he says about people as if, you know, we're not a part of this country, the things that his actions with policies, with the budget, the list goes on. You would think we've come far, but it is clear that we have so much further to go. We have so much more work to do. If Dr. King was here today, he'd be happy, you know, seeing so many different people of religions and diversities and people coming from everywhere. He'd be so happy to see this, but he also, I'm sure, would be just really distraught at what's happening in D.C. So that means we definitely have work to do to change this country for the better.
Keep it going. Everyone, please join me in thanking the Honorable London Breed, Acting Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Acting San Francisco Mayor London Breed.